My mom left me alone on my birthday. Now, I own the house, they're all getting evicted. I'm an 18-year-old guy, and my life has always been complicated. My dad passed away when I was only 10, leaving behind a house and some savings that were placed in a trust managed by my grandparents. I grew up knowing the house would legally become mine when I turned 18. Until then, my mother had full access to live in it, manage the household, and take care of me, or at least it's what everyone expected her to do. But as the years went by, it became clear that my mother's priorities had shifted entirely. After remarrying when I was 12, she seemed more focused on her new husband and their kids than on me. I became more of an afterthought, just someone who lived in the house while she played happy family with her new crew. To be honest, I got used to it. My grandparents were my saving grace, always checking in on me, providing for my needs, and ensuring I was okay. They even handled all the legal paperwork for the house until my 18th birthday. Fast forward to a few weeks ago, leading up to my birthday, my grandparents had been in contact with the lawyer who managed my dad's estate. They told me that the house's ownership would officially transfer to me on my birthday. They also mentioned that once I became the legal owner, I could decide who lived there. That information stayed in the back of my mind, but I didn't think much of it at the time. I had no idea how important it would become. The day of my 18th birthday came, and I was excited to celebrate with my family, or at least that's what I thought. The night before, my mom mentioned casually, "Oh, by the way, we're heading to a resort tomorrow for a vacation. It's just me, your stepdad, and the kids. You don't mind, right? You're old enough to stay here alone." I stared at her, stunned. "You're going on vacation on my birthday?" I asked. She waved her hand dismissively. "Don't make this a big deal. We've had this plan for months. You'll be fine. Order pizza or something." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Not only had she excluded me from the trip, but she also chose to leave on my birthday, knowing full well it was supposed to be a special day for me. It was a gut punch, but I didn't argue. I had learned over the years that fighting with her was pointless. That day, my grandparents came over to celebrate with me. They brought a cake, some gifts, and a sense of love I hadn't felt in a long time. My grandpa handed me an envelope and said, "This is from your father's lawyer. It's official now. You own the house." It was bittersweet. I loved the idea of having something my dad left for me, but I hated the fact that my mother had treated it like her property for years. My grandparents must have sensed my frustration because my grandma said, "This is your home now. If anyone makes you feel unwelcome, remember that you have the right to make changes." Those words stuck with me, especially as the day went on. My mom didn't even bother to call or text me to wish me a happy birthday. She was too busy posting pictures of herself and her new family on social media, flaunting their vacation. The breaking point came when I discovered the state of the house. My mother had completely neglected it. The living room was cluttered with their belongings, the kitchen was a disaster, and my bedroom, the one space I called my own, had been turned into storage for her stepkids' toys and junk. It felt like I was living in someone else's house, even though it was legally mine. Fueled by anger, I decided it was time to take control. I called my grandparents and explained the situation. My grandpa, always the voice of reason, said, "You're an adult now. If you want out, you have every legal right to do so. We'll back you up." I spent the next few days strategizing with my grandparents and their lawyer. We reviewed the paperwork to confirm the house's ownership and legal standing. As it turned out, my mother had no claim to the property. It was entirely mine, as per my late father's will. The lawyer assured me that I had every right to ask her to leave, especially given the neglect and entitlement she'd shown over the years. My grandparents were incredibly supportive. My grandpa said, "You've been nothing but patient all these years, but it's time to stand up for yourself. You deserve better than this." My grandma added, "We'll make sure this transition goes as smoothly as possible. You're not alone in this." When my mother and her family returned from their vacation a week later, they acted like nothing had happened. I overheard my stepdad joking about how expensive the trip was and how the house would cover the cost eventually. That comment made my blood boil. It was clear they had no respect for the fact that the house belonged to me. They treated it like their personal property, a free ride they could exploit indefinitely. That night, I confronted my mom in the kitchen. "We need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. She barely looked up from her phone. "What's up?" "I want you and your family to move out," I said firmly. "This is my house now, and I'm done being treated like a guest in my own home." She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "What are you talking about? This is our home. You're just a kid." "No, it's not," I shot back. "It's mine, legally. Dad left it to me, and I have the paperwork to prove it." Her face turned red, and she sputtered. "You can't just kick us out. Where are we supposed to go?" "That's not my problem," I said coldly. "You've had years to figure out your situation, but instead, you chose to treat me like an afterthought. Now, I'm taking control." The shouting match that followed was something I'll never forget. My mother called me ungrateful, selfish, and every other name under the sun. My stepdad joined in, accusing me of being a spoiled brat. Even my step-siblings got involved, whining about how unfair it was. But I stood my ground. "I'm not the one who abandoned their kid on their birthday to go on vacation," I reminded her. "I've put up with your behavior for years, but I'm done. You have 30 days to pack up and leave." The next morning, my grandparents arrived with my uncle and aunt to help me enforce the decision. They were a united front, ready to back me up in case things got ugly. My grandpa handed my mom a formal eviction notice, prepared by the lawyer, and explained that she had no legal grounds to fight it. My mom tried every trick in the book to manipulate me. She cried, begged, and even tried to guilt-trip me by saying, "Your father would be so disappointed in you." That line hit me hard, but my grandma quickly stepped in. "Don't you dare use his memory to justify your selfishness," she said sharply. "You've taken advantage of him and his son for long enough." As the weeks went by, the tension in the house was unbearable. My mom and stepdad refused to pack, hoping I'd cave under the pressure. But with my grandparents' support, I held firm. My uncle even offered to help me change the locks if they didn't leave voluntarily. Eventually, my mom realized I wasn't bluffing. On the final day of the eviction notice, she and her family loaded up their belongings and left. There were no heartfelt goodbyes, no apologies, just bitter glares and muttered insults. When the door finally shut behind them, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. For the first time in years, the house truly felt like mine. My grandparents and I spent the next few days cleaning and reorganizing, turning it into a home I could feel proud of. My grandma even helped me redecorate my room, which had been turned into a dumping ground for my step-siblings' toys. It was a fresh start, and I was determined to make the most of it. But my mother wasn't done causing trouble. A week later, she showed up at the house unannounced, banging on the door. "You can't just kick us out like this," she screamed when I opened it. "This is my home too." "No, it's not," I said calmly. "You had years to make it yours, but you treated it like a free ride. Now it's mine, and you're not welcome here." She tried to push past me, but my grandpa, who was visiting that day, stepped in. "You need to leave," he said firmly. "This is his house, and you have no right to be here." Her tone shifted from anger to desperation. "Where are we supposed to go? We have nowhere else." "That's not our responsibility," my grandpa replied. "You've made your choices. Now it's time to live with the consequences." Realizing she wasn't going to get anywhere, she left, but not before hurling a few choice insults my way. It hurt, but I reminded myself that I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was simply reclaiming what was mine. In the weeks that followed, my mom's behavior became increasingly erratic. She called and texted me constantly, alternating between guilt trips and threats. "You're tearing this family apart," she'd say one day, only to follow it up with, "Don't think I won't take you to court over this." I consulted with a lawyer handling my dad's estate, who reassured me that she had no legal grounds to contest the ownership of the house. "You're doing everything by the book," he said. "She's just trying to intimidate you." Even so, the stress started to take its toll. That's when my grandparents stepped in once again, rallying the rest of the family to support me. My uncles and aunts began visiting regularly, helping me with everything from house repairs to emotional support. Their presence was a constant reminder that I wasn't alone in this fight. The final straw came when my mother tried to manipulate the situation further. She spread rumors among extended family members, painting me as a heartless son who had turned his back on his own mother. Some relatives believed her, but others knew better. My uncle confronted her directly at a family gathering, calling out her lies and reminding everyone of how she had treated me over the years. "You abandoned him on his birthday," he said, "and now you're playing the victim? It's time to take responsibility for your actions." Eventually, my mom realized that her tactics weren't working. The calls and messages stopped, and she disappeared from my life entirely. It was bittersweet. I still love her despite everything, but I knew that cutting ties was the healthiest choice for me. With my mother and her new family out of the picture, life became peaceful for the sanctuary. My grandparents continued to visit regularly, helping me settle into my new reality as a homeowner. My aunts and uncles pitched in with advice and support, ensuring I never felt overwhelmed. The sense of independence was empowering. I enrolled in community college, started working part-time, and began planning for my future. Every time I walked through the door of my house, I felt a deep connection to my late father's legacy. This was more than just a property. It was a symbol of his love and care for me, a reminder that he had always wanted the best for his son. Months later, I received an unexpected call from one of my extended relatives who had initially believed my mother's lies. They had learned the truth about her behavior and wanted to apologize for doubting me. "I'm sorry we didn't see it sooner," they said. "You didn't deserve any of that." It was a small but meaningful moment. I realized that the people who truly cared about me would eventually see the truth, even if it took time. One day, as I was organizing some old belongings in the attic, I came across a box of my dad's keepsakes. Inside were photos, letters, and a journal he had kept. As I read through his words, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. He had written about his dreams for me, his hopes that I would grow up to be strong, independent, and kind. It was a poignant reminder that, despite all the challenges I had faced, I was on the right path. The final chapter in this saga came when my mother tried to reach out again, months after going silent. She sent a long, apologetic email, claiming she had seen the error of her ways and wanted to reconcile. While a part of me wanted to believe her, I couldn't ignore the years of neglect and entitlement. I replied with a simple message: "I hope you find happiness, but I've moved on. Please respect my boundaries. Today, I'm in a much better place. My house is truly my home, filled with love, laughter, and the memories of my dad. My grandparents are proud of how far I've come, and I'm grateful every day for their unwavering support." To anyone reading this, remember, standing up for yourself is never easy, but it's always worth it. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them, so please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one.